Guys, attendees, welcome to our latest live session, guys. In the chat right now, panelists and attendees, why don't we give these two titans, Anna and Jim, a warm welcome by just saying hello and where you're from so we know, because we're definitely going coast to coast as Jim is in London. Anna, all splinted up, is from Winnipeg. What do we got? Hit it from panelists and attendees. Physio Cream coming live from Calgary. We got Jim Millard, of course. Jim is the fastest guy on this panel. I'm just excited that Calgary looks just this good behind me on this sunset. We got Sandra from Aurora, Glenda from Bolton, Caitlin Turner from Toronto. Sure. Is this Louise Taylor from Calgary, or is this Louise Taylor? Is there a Calgary girl on this chat, or is Louise Taylor just watching? Heather Smith from Windsor, Essex, Ontario. Awesome. All right, and we've got Simon. Simon, welcome from Southern Manitoba. We got some Manitoba people. Awesome, and obviously Ontario-centric crowd here. There we go. So, guys. Jim, Anna, you guys gone through incredible. Yes, Louise Taylor from our hometown from Calgary. So, Jim, Anna, man, it's been a tremendous day on all fronts across the physiotherapy landscape, with students being turfed out of P&E for the third time. There's a lot of mental anguish going on. The social channels across the world have been going crazy here. I feel like we need to talk about resilience. Is that what we're talking about today? What are we talking about?
Get there. Yeah, huge.
I have no idea.
I'll take the lead because Anna's a little.
That's right.
Tramadoled up.
What's that?
Anna's a little tramadoled up.
I said Anna's a little loopy. My internet's a little loopy too, so she's gonna hang in there. But let's kind of recap and move forward. Is that good, Kareem?
Absolutely. Jim, you're on the mic.
Okay. So you guys, where we're coming from is Anna did a great job talking about rituals. And what rituals lead to is a little bit of an awakening to go from that subconscious to the conscious, that invisible to the visible, right? To hear your own voice. And then that allows you to basically tap into feelings. We talked about maybe understanding where you're at with feelings, checking in with yourself, your values and beliefs, those things that are kind of hidden underneath the surface there, that once you kind of bring them out, you kind of get that aha when you self-reflect on them and you become self-aware. And then we talked about that starting to take us to authenticity, right? And that's where we've kind of got you guys. And with authenticity was really holding space. And holding space is not well understood. And if you can't hold space for yourself, it's hard to really have self-compassion. And then that'll lead you more to be an accepting of yourself and of others. And I'm going to kind of say it to Anna. I think, well, you guys throw in the chat here. Just tell us if you understand holding space, right? Let's use the chat. Let's make it interactive. Okay.
Guys,
so I'm going to encourage that.
Yeah.
Just a reminder, guys, set your chat function to panelists and attendees. Otherwise, it's just going to be Jim and I and Anna with the one-handed bandit working and listening to the chat here. So, Glenda, thank you for chiming in early.
So I'm going to invite a little bit more reflection there with holding space, because I think that a lot of us, I am in my pajamas, guys, in case you're wondering. These are my spring pajamas because it is spring. And I just thought it's really hard to get undressed and dressed right now with one arm. So I think a lot of us think that we hold space really well. I certainly used to think I was a really good space holder for people. But I recognize that I personally have a tendency to want to find the positive in things, and sometimes maybe too quickly. And someone who is struggling, that can almost feel like a positive toxicity. So as an example, Very recent example, just last night, a close girlfriend of mine who has had a significant amount of suffering was messaging me because she has an orthopedic surgeon friend, and she really wanted me to have him take a look at my wrist to see what he thought we should do. And at the end of the day, you know, I said to her, I'm like 99, I'm 100% sure it's fractured. I can see the deformity, and I can tell it's bone pain. It's definitely fractured. And she's not a physio. And she said to me, oh, well, at least it's not a tear. So I was kind of like, what the hell does that mean? Of course, I didn't text back anything. I just, you know, absorbed that, but went, wow, like she was trying to make me feel better by saying something that she actually knew nothing about, number one. And number two, you know, when someone has just finished telling you that something is more painful than childbirth, and I've taken Tylenol 3 and nothing has happened, to bounce back with, wow, well, at least it's not a tear. And we might not be quite that obvious when we're, you know, dealing with our patients, but I think we all have a tendency to want them to see the positive side. And I think it's just more important that we recognize that we have to let things land. As I said last time we met, that you don't immediately throw that ball back like a hot potato that you're trying to get rid of with something that's going to make everyone feel better. Similarly, you don't come back with a fix. You don't automatically, you know, try and repair things for someone. So it is Heather Plett, who wrote the book, The Art of Holding Space, who came up with the term hijacking space. I know for me personally, when someone hijacks my space, it feels, the analogy I used in a recent Instagram post was, to me, that feels suffocating. It feels like they're crowding my space with their own needs, with their own projections, with their own inability to be uncomfortable. And when someone is holding space, it feels like the sky is being held open for me. And it's okay to let me suffer for a minute, because, you know, I'm telling you that I'm suffering, and I would prefer that you just sit with me in my suffering. So just to be clear, a lot of times we think we are holding space really well, but we all err. And so if I ever catch myself doing that, I try to backtrack a little bit. Both with myself. So, you know, how do we not hold space with, how do we hijack our own space? We might have expectations of how we should behave. Like, oh, I have to be clothed tonight to be here. Now I can show up in my pajamas. This'll work for you guys. You know me already. You know, trying to minimize my suffering. Oh, other people have it worse, whatever, you know, we can hijack our own space. So it is a concept that is really useful, and when we can hold space really well for ourselves, then we can truly find self-compassion and self-love, which is what this is really all about. You're muted.
I know. I'm thinking I'm slow up there, but I'm better down here, whatever that means.
The OG
right?
webinars has
Getting excited.
Muted. So tell us what you were saying before you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, I think, would you not say, Anna, and anyone else pipe in, right? To me, that sounds like empathy, right? Like, to me, empathy is the gate to holding space, because if you don't have empathy, you can't serve compassion. I think empathy is the gate to everything. Empathy is the ability for us to kind of have that non-judgmental, you know, acceptance when we hear somebody, and not try to kind of steal their space, but to just sit in their space. You kind of said that, like, embrace the suffering.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other key piece there is that you have to have become comfortable with your own suffering, actually, to be comfortable with someone else's. So what I notice is people who tend to hijack space are people who can't sit in their own discomfort. So it really is an interesting, you know, feedback loop that does happen. So the more comfortable we become sitting with our own pain, the more comfortable we become sitting with someone else's without an immediate need to repair it. You know, or to fix it. So it is empathy for sure.
Yeah, and honestly, I think, Kareem, at the start, we're talking about all these poor kids with their exams, like, oh my God, I'd be going crazy. But we're talking about eventually on this road to resilience. And then what you guys are going to get from us this week is talking about taking this authenticity, this ability to hold space, right? And this ability to kind of do it from self-compassion. And we want to take that to connection, right? And it's going from me to we. And then once you're able to do that, and I think that's what Anna's talking about, then that's when we start to see resilience really start to build in somebody, right? It's this ability to kind of connect with yourself, to give yourself, breathe in, right? So that then you can kind of breathe out to somebody else. And only when you're able to do that, the studies, the science, and we'll share a bit of that with you here in a flow chart in a few minutes, that leads to this resilience, which I think, to me, honestly, I'm going to get a little sappy after, but I think it's kind of just part of love. But I don't know, Anna, what do you think?
No, I would agree. I think it all comes from that, right? It comes from, can you look at yourself with love? Can you look at other people with love? You know, when you have connected to yourself on a deeper level, it's so much easier to connect to other people because you immediately find common denominators. You know, it's one of those things that I always train my new staff that when you are assessing someone, when you're first meeting someone, one of the very first things I ask them to try and do is not so much come up with a clinical diagnosis. Don't worry about that. You'll figure that out. But what I need you to do, if this is going to be effective for the client and if this is going to be rewarding for you, you really need to connect to the person. And the fastest way to connect is to find common denominators. We all know that. We know that, you know, as soon as you become a mom, all of a sudden you notice everybody who has a baby with a stroller, right? As soon as your head is shaved because you're having chemo, you see other shaved heads. And you immediately connect to these people that you have something in common with. So this knowing yourself better gives you a much broader foundation on which you can connect to someone else because you will always find a common denominator. You know, at the end of the day, I'll say, look, if you're really struggling and you can't find anything you have in common, you're both human, you know, and make a connection on that in and of itself, and then allow yourself to treat that person from that connected space, because that will alter the quality of your presence, that will alter the therapeutic alliance, and it's going to alter your outcomes. And with ourselves, again, as we connect to more people who we think are not necessarily similar to ourselves, people that we might think are difficult to connect with, we're connecting to different parts of ourselves too. Because, you know, I'm not a psychologist, but every psychologist you talk to will say, what we see in others that drives us crazy is usually some hidden part of ourselves that drives us crazy. So the more we can connect to something that's driving us crazy in someone else, then probably we're going to be able to connect to ourselves deeper again. So again, that loop just continues to work its magic for us, if that makes sense.
No, I like it. And it's interesting. I really think the secret of life, when you kind of look, is connection, right? It's everything we strive for in a relationship with our children, with our patients, with ourselves. If you can't connect, you can't take that step. I mean, it's the foundation that you can step off of. If you don't have that foundation of self-compassion and connection, it's hard to step beyond that. And I think that's where nobody gets to this resilience piece. Can we throw that chart up, Kareem? So I think this is the road we want to lead you guys down, but this is interesting. This is a study, and we're going to put this in week 5's kind of mail out for you guys. This is a study by a Stanford University scientist called Tabibnia Golness. And she's probably the world expert on resilience. When you look at the behavioral science behind resilience and how people kind of earn it. And it's really interesting because if you look at it, there's 3 columns, and things should start to sound familiar with where we've kind of talked to you guys, and if you've had a chance to reflect on this stuff. So the far left is upregulating the positive. And it's really neat. And believe me, if there was a book out there on the power of positive thinking, I've read it. It's in the room next door on a shelf. But positivity is not enough, right? And what we could put in that category is optimism, right? Just smiling humor, just that whole upbeat kind of personality, self-affirmations, right? Just kind of living in good, positive memories. Then, as well as regulating the positive, we've got all the physical health stuff, right? The sleep, the exercise, the diet, right? All that stuff, the gut microbiome that we're really kind of understanding more and more. Well, look, we do that, right? Maybe not the nutrition part, but I mean, look, that whole wellness coaching, I think, is where physios will kind of maybe step into. And that's what we're talking about here. And then look at what Anna's talking about. And that's why I wanted to put this up now. This whole social connectedness piece is huge. And it's so friggin' lacking right now in COVID that I think it's going to be a big, big issue that goes forward for years. And we'll keep speaking to this. But Anna, what would you say the lack of social connection is the equivalent to smoking what? How many packs a day?
Well, I don't think in the study that I read, they actually illuminated how many packs, but they were saying that a lack of social connection was as harmful. It was more harmful, actually, than smoking, than obesity and high blood pressure. So I found that to be incredibly fascinating. Her last name is going to escape me, Jim, but you're going to remember. Oh, is it Barbara Feldman? Is that who I love? Is that her name, her last name?
Barb Fredrickson.
Fredrickson, thank you. And she's the one. So I bring this up because we're talking about how during COVID, social connection has been, lack of social connection has been an issue. Without question, it has been an issue because the science has always told us that the depth of connection is really more important than the number of connections. However, I do want to bring up the idea that Barbara Fredrickson brings up, and that's those micro moments of positive resonance. So I am very cognizant of trying to make eye contact with people, trying to smile through my eyes while I have my mask on, trying to say hello. I mean, I always say hello to people I walk past. That's just, I've always been that way. But I make a more concerted effort, even especially if I see that their eyes are averting mine, because those things will help to feed me. And I know that even if that person doesn't respond, I'm sort of planting a little seed, and the research shows they are more likely to potentially reach out to the next stranger they encounter, even if they don't respond to me. So yes, we are lacking social connection during this time, but we can do little things. But in the long run, it is really important that we tune that up even more so, and particularly with meaningful connections. And you can't have meaningful connections if you aren't your authentic self. So.
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing. I think we really strive and do well on this, upregulating the positive, right? And this meiostriatal reward networks, and however that affects our nervous system. It's interesting, gratitude would fit into that too. And if you look at some of the rituals that Anna talked about, I think you can maybe plug them in a little bit here, right? Some of the journaling may fit in this column. And if you look at the middle column, I think, again, as putting people in making them broken, right? We do really well in this middle category sometimes with just, cognitive coping skills, behavioral coping skills. And I think that we're getting better at this. Now, it might not be something we do as much. We may be referring on to this, but just to recognize, just some of the avoidance stuff, some of the, cognitive behavior, the CBT, and just some of the behavioral therapy stuff that I think, again, I'm going to give Caitlin a shout out as well, because I think that's another area that coaching and good kind of niche coaching, I'm not a big fan of the word coaching, but where therapy meets coaching and coaching meets therapy, I think we cross these lines, and people that don't need that extra, psychological support. And it's interesting, we've got self-efficacy in there. And what would you say, Anna? And we're going to share with you guys too. And well, you would have had something in this one from Kristen Neff. Do you want to say what's more important, self-compassion or self-efficacy?
Well, self-efficacy, I think, and self-compassion, I wouldn't compare them. I think we tend to compare self-esteem and compassion
Yeah.
for sure, right? Self-efficacy, I kind of put in a different arena personally, for me, for sure. If we do see between self-compassion and self-efficacy that if someone is more self-compassionate, they actually, or pardon me, self-esteem. If someone is more self-compassionate, they will develop more self-esteem. Now, my thinking, and I haven't read any research, but my intuitive thought would be that the more self-compassionate you are, probably you're going to have a little bit more self-efficacy because you're not going to be drowning in beating yourself up, right? If so oftentimes, I mean, we can think about this in our own lives. We've seen it in clients for sure, where, oh, I didn't do my homework for, 5 days. So I figured, what the heck, I've given up. I'm just useless. I never pay attention to, or I never follow through on what I'm supposed to do. And so all of a sudden there's a whole story following, this failure to do your homework for 5 days is suddenly I'm a failure at everything. So for sure, I think we will see that there is, a connection between self-compassion and self-efficacy. I personally haven't read any of that research, but intuitively it makes beautiful sense.
It's interesting, right? You kind of avoid some of that amygdala hijack stuff when you can start to be self-aware and be the ocean, not the waves. You can kind of step back into that seat of self. But what blew me away from this, and this is where I think that we're going to go out on a limb here as physios talking about this, because we can go deep, 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 and it can be fun, is this transcendence of the self, right? Which sounds a little, right? What's Jim smoking tonight? Anna's on tramadol. Don't ask me what I'm on. But this is the beauty where the mindfulness kind of comes in, purpose in life, whether we want to call it religion, I promise we won't go there, exposure to nature, right? Flow, awe, hypnotic state, gets a bit weird, but that's, I think, the key. And if you look at what that does to the nervous system, that's huge. That just kind of taps into and boosts the positive. It kind of boosts down regulating the negative. And it seems to be that missing, I want to say missing link, but that other gate, and that we kind of kept talking about, where instead of looking from the outside, that seems to be that gate to the inside that really tips this road to resilience. And I love this flow chart just because I'm a visual person. And how would you say you transcend to the self, Anna? I mean, you've, with no disrespect to Brene Brown and Kristen Neff, but they started talking about this stuff 10 years ago, and you were friggin' living it 30 years ago. So how did you tap into this in your own story?
So quite honestly, it was for survival, quite by accident and for survival, right? So the way that I look at it now in hindsight is that these rituals and this ability to have self-compassion and self-love in a moment of tremendous uncertainty and anxiety, like perhaps like we're in now, they will help to sustain you. They will help to keep you afloat. In times when things are more settled, staying true to these rituals, to this self-compassion, to this self-love, to this mindfulness will accelerate your connection to your own purpose, to your own meaning, and will absolutely lead you towards the transcendence. Now, obviously, you don't transcend and stay there. Things happen, right? So, you will fall back down the ladder of selves, as you like to refer to it, when something goes wrong. But for the most part, you're not falling all the way back down. You have an awareness that you're falling back down, and you can get yourself back up that rung a lot faster. I can recall, so my treatments were in 1997, so not quite 30 years, but more like 24. So I went through all of that, and within 4 years of finishing my treatment, I also left my first marriage, which was, a big stressor during treatment in many ways as well. And then I became self-employed. And so I had about a 5-year period where I really had a lot of challenges, but I was meeting each challenge. I absolutely did suffer from some post-traumatic stress following my chemo and my radiation, which is completely normal as you're trying to get back to life, but recovered from that relatively well, and, was doing well. And somewhere in maybe about 15 years ago, I can remember actually seeking counseling because I was in a romantic relationship. We weren't living together, but I was in a romantic relationship that was really intense, but it was also really challenging. And it was draining me in a way that I was really unfamiliar with. And I actually remember going to counseling. And when she said to me, "Why are you here?" And I said, "I don't know what to tell you other than I feel like I have no resilience left." And she looked at me like I was a unicorn, but it's like, yeah, it's like, it's interesting. I don't think I've ever met someone, no one has ever come and used those words, but it just felt that, I had nothing left in the tank, and yet nothing big was going on. And that was the piece that was really difficult for me to understand, because I had been through such big things prior to that, with the Hodgkin's, with the divorce, with becoming self-employed, and all of a sudden I have no resilience because of a romantic relationship. So I understood myself quite well. I didn't understand myself as well as I do now. And now I can understand why that particular relationship was really draining me. So yeah, you transcend, you fall back down, you get back up. And every time that you get back up, it gets easier to get back up, and you learn a little bit more. And that is, if there's one thing that I think is really important to learn is we're all in this liminal space right now. We've all been profoundly impacted by the past year in different ways. And for so many of us, we may be thinking that our strength is tied into our ability to bounce back. But, we are kind of like elastic in that we don't exactly bounce back to where we were. We shouldn't. We should become, a different version of who we were. And so often we look to success as being, "Oh, I'm back to where I was." Well, no, at the end of this, when 2021 is over and we are into our new normal, you're going to have evolved into a different person. Your values may have been reorganized for you. You might be more aware of, your feelings. You might even have a different purpose and decide that some of the things that were so meaningful aren't so meaningful. And that doesn't mean you have failed to come out of this liminal space, or that you haven't transcended. In fact, it means you have transcended, because you have responded.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. And just to reflect back, last time we were talking about that second mountain, that ability to kind of go from me to we that we're talking about with this connection, is this transcendence of the self, right? We're not talking about all of a sudden you're, at the foot of whatever and you've kind of got enlightenment. There's no such thing. Like, enlightenment's the friggin' journey. Enlightenment's resilience, right? Enlightenment's kind of going beyond you and kind of being part of something bigger. And I think that's what we're saying with this transcending of the self. And that's that second mountain maybe we referred to last time. And it's lovely because mindfulness is huge. And can I ask you guys again, and Kareem, I think you jump in here too, because you're brilliant on this. And some of the people on the panel, like, I'm just a facilitator. What's the difference between mindfulness and meditation? Because that really gets confused a lot. And where would you put meditation maybe in this whole, I would still put it in that transcending of the self, but what would you say the keys to mindfulness are for you guys?
Anna, you jumping in on this?
Yeah.
I'm letting you answer.
Here you go. Yeah, mindfulness, meditation.
Oh man.
we're just slot it in here because it's cute.
Oh man, meditation and mindfulness are interrelated but very different in itself. For me, my meditation is something I've been doing as part of my faith-based practice, but I've been doing it for like 80 days straight now. Has become a game changer in terms of turning inside of yourself to discover what the universe is bringing to you, which creates the environment for mindfulness, right? So like the world's, the heavens behind this picture right here are feeding us with all sorts of gems, and it can be like the clouds behind us and just fly right by you if your eyes aren't open and receiving it. So for me, they're interrelated but very different. I'd love to hear from whoever else is on there. Sorry, I did an OG thing. Whoever wants to speak, just raise your hand up and I can unmute your mic if you wanted to jump in on that as well. So,
anybody? I always thought it was an interesting thing. I like the way Kareem put it, where I think I heard you say maybe meditation is a way to have the awareness to go to mindfulness, right? It's maybe a step to get there, or a way, a path.
It's the highway, man. For me, it's the journey, and the mindfulness is the scenery as I'm going on that journey to smell the roses and see that.
Yeah.
So,
does Tanya, do you want to jump in on that? That's a great one.
Let's get Tanya Yardley on the mic here. Tanya, you're open to talk.
I'm not sure if that's what I believe about it, but I have heard it just described that way. And
tell us what you believe, TY. We always love it when you're on the mic.
I use meditation a lot in my day-to-day activities and mindfulness. And I see meditation as a very intentional act where I sit down and create space for it. And I kind of calm and quiet my mind, where I think of, so meditation for me is very deliberate, and mindfulness is something that I engage in, where I'm noticing things around me, and it feels broader. It feels like, sometimes it's as simple as enjoying the food that I'm tasting, or hearing the sounds that are around me, or just, kind of grounding myself in the moment and all that moment is. So it's kind of weird. I'm not sure how I would define them from each other, but both of them calm my nervous system down.
I love how you, in the chat, you wrote that mindfulness is the awareness of something, while meditation is the awareness of nothing.
Yeah.
I think we all spend a lot of time with that nothing, but that was fantastic.
Yeah. So that was how it was described to me when I asked someone what the difference was. And I remember kind of wrestling with it in my head a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. I think Anna, I would be really interested in hearing kind of the way that you look at those things too. And same with you, Jim. I know all of us are meditators, and mindfulness is, I feel like that's a broader thing for some reason. I don't know why.
I agree. I think to me, mindfulness is moment to moment awareness. And it doesn't require setting aside time. It's just paying attention to what's happening. And so whether I am eating an orange, whether I am in the forest, whether I am having a conversation, I'm being mindful. And that mindfulness will extend not just to what I am hearing, but what am I feeling in response to what I am hearing, in response to what I am seeing. How is my reaction impacting the person that I'm interacting with? So just a real awareness. It's almost like operating at a different level. To me, this is kind of a weird analogy, but work with me here. Remember that I'm on tramadol. So, when you go to the dentist's office, the dentist's office might not be a good idea. The hairstylist. Have you ever fallen asleep in the chair at the hairstylist? One of my favorite things to do is to fall asleep in a public space, because in that public space, you have a conscious awareness of your changing levels of consciousness. You know, you're in this space, you're fully aware. And then all of a sudden, you know, you start to notice that you're kind of not so fully aware. And then, you know, you're less aware. And then, wow, I can't figure out what people are saying. I can hear that people are talking around me, but none of it makes sense. And where am I anyway? And there's this level of consciousness about not being at the same level of consciousness. And when we go to bed at night in our own quiet rooms, we don't experience such a vivid transition because it's quiet and we go from awake to asleep, presumably, right? So to me, mindfulness is a little bit like that, in that I'm operating at a different level of consciousness when I'm being mindful, but moment to moment, whereas meditation is that taking that time. And for me, it's not always nothingness. I might listen to a guided meditation. In fact, it tends to be my preference to listen to guided meditations, or to listen to mantras, or to listen to, I really, really, really love listening to music that is just instrumental music as my mindfulness, or pardon me, as my meditation as well. So yeah, very similar to your approach, Tanya, I'd say.
All I know is it's been life-changing, which is awesome.
So this is a question, even Tanya, feel free to jump in on this question while you guys were, you know, spreadsheeting out here on this flow chart. So looking at this, if I was an attendee, I would look at this flow chart and say, well, if I've got my mindset correct, like that positivity, optimism, smiling humor, and I've got my heart set, like I'm exercising, sleeping, doing all this stuff, and then you know, I'm in COVID. I was wanting to hear this as well, as I'm connecting with peers. This is how I understand how, Jim, you and Anna met over social and over digital communication. And if you meditate, I mean, do you need anything in the middle? Like, I mean, because obviously this flow chart tells me that if you know your purpose, you're mindful, you meditate, you got your right mindset, you take care of your health, and you try to connect, then, I mean, do we need to worry about CBT and, you know, all these like books that we find at Chapters and Indigo that fill aisles and aisles of this down-regulating the negative? Can you comment on that? So if you got the outer columns working, you got outer columns, do you even have to worry about the middle? Or does it sort itself out?
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Tim. No, I was just going to say, I would argue that you have to rely on the middle less when the two sides are working well. But I think there are some really important things about acknowledging that there is negative and accepting what is. So I think that there's still an important part of that middle piece in terms of the acceptance and the cognitive reappraisal and our ability to label what's coming up. I think those are still important skills. And I think sometimes if we get over-focused on upregulating the positive, sometimes we fail to acknowledge, you know, some of the things that maybe don't feel as good, but are still real in our lives. So
Tanya, you mean that we all want to be in summer, but it's important to acknowledge the winter of life when
if there's rain, there's rain, and just being able to accept what is sometimes is I think equally important. But I mean, you two are the ones that I would say, or you three are the ones that, you know, I would say are pretty expert at explaining all this. So I apologize for interjecting, but yeah, that was just my first initial response.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you can put life in a flow chart, and I'm not trying to suggest that either. There's realities in living the questions and in the spaces between these columns, right? But I think it's just a nice way to look. I like the fact that a lot of this self-help industry has been so much the positive, right? The stuff in the middle, we kind of hide sometimes in therapy and don't acknowledge it enough. It's something that we all need to kind of step into. And the transcendence just was always the realm of the weirdos, right? But the science is there, we know that. And it's just, and that's this road we're trying to kind of take everybody on, is this kind of road to resilience, where maybe you'll find your purpose and meaning a little bit more in that, right? And you know, personally, I'm not a big cushion guy. Like Anna and I joke about that all the time. I'm not going to sit there on a cushion, but I don't think you can do meditation wrong. And that's the thing, as long as you're just attempting to do it and just being able to kind of tap into that. But you could put me out in the woods, and I'm going to get more out of that physiologically and mentally than anything else, right? So my friend basically goes down and goes blue, and I've got to work the rest of the day. They're in there trying to help the guy, and he can't go, right? They didn't even let his wife go to see him until like the next day. So it's just brutal. And so where do I go? As soon as I get done, I figured, okay, I'm going to stay at work and try to help people, because what am I going to do at home, right? So where do I go? I just went to the forest and I just stayed in there for 2 hours. I go to my special tree, I walk around, try to find the deer. And that's, to me, like I'll leave that 10, 15 days younger. I walk out of there. So I think it's just, again, it's a flow chart. It's not life, but these are the important things to maybe reflect on. And we're just trying to bring it back to some of this work that we've tried to get you guys to just think about. And as healthcare practitioners, we don't think how important this is to us. We don't have it to give it away. So hopefully this is something that you guys can resonate a little bit with.
Is there a minimum or ideal time for meditation in terms of 5, 10, 15? You mentioned 2 hours in the forest looking for Bambis. Is there something, that is optimal based on the science behind building resilience? Because this is definitely looks like a very interesting topic. Is there something you guys have come across?
Anna, what do you think?
Everything that I have come across has always suggested to start with something that is achievable first, because obviously it's harder to stay engaged for longer periods of time. So I often recommend to people, try 5 to 10 minutes when you're first starting, and don't worry that your mind is going to wander. So even if you're listening to a visualization, your mind might start to wander, but just think of it as a puppy on a leash. You're training a puppy, and you're not gonna yank that puppy. You're gonna gently encourage that puppy to come back, and you're gonna carry on. And don't judge it. You just carry on. I think the research that has been done on longer periods of time. Certainly when they look at the brains of the monks who meditate for extended periods of time, we see beautiful, beautiful, crazy changes. I don't think any of us need to be there. I always, this is a conversation that Jim and I had too, is, how lovely it would be to be a monk, but monks don't necessarily have to have actual relationships with people. And we do, so I think, and we want to have those relationships. And so I think that we have to take that into account. I certainly, personally, I love 20 minutes, ideally, although I'm going to tell you that during COVID, at the very beginning, I was doing 60 to 80-minute yoga nidras every single day, because I would pull my yoga mat out to move and I couldn't move. And it wasn't that I wasn't doing other exercise. I was doing walking, I was doing running, I was doing strength training. But when I pulled out my yoga mat, my brain and my heart just didn't want to do yoga moves. I just wanted to lie down and listen to a guided meditation. And I would start with a 20-minute one. And the one that I have set up rolls into another one. And it just seemed that for that first 2 weeks that I would automatically stay for 60 to 80 minutes. Clearly, that's what I needed. Now, I wasn't a novice. I don't think that would have been what happened for me as a novice. As a novice, probably, 5 minutes, 10 minutes would have been enough. But you start to really be able to do what you need with much less resistance as you get more connected to yourself as well. I remind you as often as I can that I resisted every single strategy that I am now so committed to. So don't worry about it if you aren't finding that you're easily getting committed to these different rituals. It's not easy to become committed to a ritual, a new habit, to change the way that you operate in your day. But if you do get hooked into them, they become life-changing, and then you can't imagine any other way. So
Yeah, I always like that Gandhi quote, right? Your habits basically become your destiny. So it's just, and then so I'd like to ask, like, so Anna, I know every day is different, right? But you're more of a morning meditator, or yeah.
yeah, so I'm morning, almost always morning. What's going to really make me crazy with this is I journal is a huge piece of the start to my day. And when I journal, I have to do it in my handwriting. I don't like to type it. So I'm not sure how. We'll have to check in on me and see how I'm doing with that. I'm learning to write with my left hand. I've always played with it as a kid. So it's not super messy, but holy crow, is it slow. And then my meditation is also in the morning. Although during COVID, during those first few weeks of COVID, it seemed to arise. Like I could do a yoga nidra. I could pull one at any time of the day. So
Yeah. And Kareem, you're like 5 a.m. club. You're right up there with the rest of us here. You get up and get exercising and then you meditate, or what's your order? Not that there's a right order.
You know what? I do it opposite to I think everyone on the planet.
Yeah.
I meditate before I go to sleep, and for me, preparation to win a day is actually the night before. So that's where I position my meditations. For me, meditation is mental unwinding and unfolding, and AMs are all about like accelerating and getting energy. So I would probably fall back asleep, Anna, if I was doing 20 that you're doing. I'm just being brutally honest. To me, meditation is definitely the unwind, but to each is their own. 20 minutes is definitely seems to be a sweet spot for some people. I like 10, so that's just me, but I don't know what the science is. I've done 5 minutes. They're not very, very effective at all. But yeah, that's. But Jim and Anna, you guys talked about journaling. You talked about yoga nidra, and are there other things that people can do to develop this sort of mindfulness to get channeled back into the pathway of resilience?
Yeah, I think that whole, like Anna gave a nice list there a couple weeks ago that like was.
I think finding the thing that attracts you the most is the place to start. So if you love to doodle, if you love to paint, if you love to draw, if you love to be out in nature, if you love to listen to music, start with something that you're naturally drawn to. And I do believe your repertoire will grow quite naturally, but start with the simple thing, the simple thing first. I think I remember very distinctly for me, the simple thing was a gratitude list, and it just happened very organically. This is, again, 25 years ago, there wasn't a lot of research on making gratitude lists, but I just noticed that if I got up in the morning and I thought about the things that I was grateful for, and it could be simple little things like that fantastic cup of coffee, that first one, nothing tastes quite like it. And I would make, 5 to 10 things I'd have to write down that I was grateful for that day. I just started to notice that it started to impact how I invited myself into the world. And so it became a practice. And then it grew into, more of the meditating, which started as creative visualization, which, by the way, I did at night at first too, Kareem, because with chemo, I couldn't sleep. It really wrecked my sleep pattern. And so I would do a grounding creative visualization at bedtime, and I would sleep like a log. And in the morning, I'd wake up completely refreshed. So it does work beautifully in the evening as well.
Jim, what's your?
Now for me in the morning, I just try to 10-10-10, right? I'll try to get up and move. But again, I'm funny because I'll go on little tangents. I'll get stuff in my head. But I'm pretty good with this 10-10-10, where I'm just going to journal, boom, gratitude, boom, and then 10 just kind of getting to me before I then might exercise or do some poetry or start the day on purpose. I have to be up an hour before everyone else here. I'll lose my mind, right? That's where I'm finding my mind. But so that's my way in, and I'll do some other things based on whether it's winter or summer or that. But it doesn't need to be a lot. It just needs to be that practice of going to yourself so that we can then kind of step out and go to the world.
You know, one of the things that for the people out on this call that have families, you know, one of the coolest things that ever happened was creating a gratitude jar or a jar of awesome. So this is one thing that you could do with your families if you have young kids, is to like each put in like a little thing that was awesome about the day, or something that you know, you're truly grateful for, and just like keep stuffing that jar, and then once it's full, start pulling it out one every day, and then just reflecting on what was amazing. So that jar of awesomeness, or awesome, has always been a fun thing to create and look back on it as a family unit. So things can happen, and I know Anna had talked about a whole bunch of things, but that just the 10 10 10 10 and getting it before the family, it really ignited that thought process on my mind. But yeah, awesome.
And I just want to give Anna a shout out. Like, you're a trooper just to show up and even try to match my shirt with your cast. So I appreciate
on my screen,
but
you know what's funny? What's funny on my screen is Anna's holding up Jim with her purple cast. That's what I see. That's what I'm seeing right now. So I find that even more amazing that she's doing that with the
Oh, wow. It's just a fracture. It's not a big deal. The universe telling me that I'm not going back to in-person care quite when I thought I was.
So we got about 5 minutes left, you know, for the hour here. I'm just wondering, so obviously, you know, we've got a mail out that's going to be coming out midweek this week for some homework. You know, what should people think about, or what do you think they should be expecting?
So what we're going to give you this week is just on the action piece, just a little bit more reflection. It's talking about this, where you're taking this authenticity, right? Just finally bringing stuff from that subconscious to conscious, again, that invisible to the visible. Now you've kind of had this awakening. You're leaning into this authenticity. Now it's time to give it away, because that's the transcendence, is to give it away. You can't keep it and smother it and hold on to it. So got an action piece about that. And there's a couple higher and higher grounds on just how huge connection and the need for connection is. And just a brilliant one that just really relates to us as healthcare practitioners. And then the good old standby Simon Sinek's golden circle, right? Because we're starting to lead more into a little bit of purpose and meaning in the next couple of weeks, is just that why, how, what, right? But just to kind of sink into that why. But it's this week's all about that stepping from me to we.
Awesome. That sounds. Anna, anything to add? I know this is a tough question to ask when you're shorthanded, because you're not using your right hand.
You can only talk with one hand.
You're Italian, right? So this is
hard.
truly functionally disabling.
It's so functionally disabling. I would say, you know, if the big take home from this week is, I think we're physios. I think that naturally, most of us, if you looked at our personality profiles, we're incredibly kind people. And I think if we can just extend that same kindness to ourselves, that we would extend to other people, that same level of compassion, forgiveness, understanding, you know, non-judgment, like, you know, so again, as an example, my hair is a disaster because my husband can't do my hair and I can't do my hair with my left hand. I'm in my pajamas. I don't really care anymore. You know, this is who I am, and I'm comfortable with who I am. So I can be here like this. Could I have done this 20 years ago? Probably not. I probably would have said, oh, Jim, you go ahead and carry on. Right. But I think as we learn to love ourselves more, and be kinder to ourselves and treat ourselves the way we would treat our best friend or our child, I think it's really transformational when we can do that.
That was beautiful. Thanks, Anna. That was definitely beautiful.
You're welcome.
for definitely a soulful moment for a self-care Sunday, and beautifully illustrated in your PJs. Now, I thought that was the floral shirt. We're going into the polo shirt on the side of Jim. Final moments. Give us some final thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's special to be here Sunday night on the first day of spring. We didn't think thanks you guys. It kind of warms my heart to see people 17 degrees here in the sunny South, and for people to show up. I really appreciate it. And it's just lovely to see people making that commitment to themselves. And it's a journey. We put up a flow chart, but there's no recipe. Anna talks about the ladder, and half the time we're in the middle somewhere, just trying to recognize that, the way to climb it's from the inside. So I think that's the key to me, is just not needing to keep adding and adding and adding stuff, but subtraction kind of to your naked self is the ultimate kind of way forward.
So speaking of naked self, not that we're going to have you on as your naked self, but I feel like we're just hitting the tip of the iceberg here with this whole self-development talk, and all the things that have transpired. I know that initially we had set this up for like 3 live sessions. We're on our 3rd. Anna, Jim, what do you think? Do you think we could pull another session out for our attendees? Would that be possible? Is there an appetite from you guys to do one more session here and see how we can accelerate the growth? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'd like to get it closed well.
Yeah.
With all the work done, and just kind of reflect on it.
And Anna, what do you think? You think you'd be up for another final round?
Absolutely. I think what would be really great is if our team has something particular that they would like us to review, if there's something that they want to go back to and discuss further, or if there's something we haven't touched upon yet, especially I think by the time that we have our last one, they will have had all of the emails. So if you've received all of the emails and we haven't touched upon something that you were hoping we'd touch upon, we are so open. We are treating this the way we treat our patients, right? It's like, what is in front of me today? What do you need today? And that's how we'd like to approach this. So what do you need? What do you want? We are happy to deliver as best as we can.
That's awesome. And so the people, the attendees on this call right now, I want to hear a hell yeah in the chat for another session here. So if you guys can put that in the session, are you guys excited as I am, and Jim is, and Anna is? We got Caitlin, Tanya, Jim, of course, Christine, Heather, Louise Taylor from YYC, Simon. Thank you. So it looks like everyone is game for this. Now, normally we do this on a bi-weekly basis. That's going to take us to Easter Sunday, and respecting, I know Jim didn't want to talk about religion, but respecting people who have religious obligations over the Easter break. I think a good date, if you guys are game, would be, so Easter is April 4th, we're looking at a self-care Sunday as April 11th. So does that work for you guys, Jim and Anna? Because we can't have it without you guys.
Yeah,
So, April 11th, guys, 2021, 8 p.m., same time, same channel. We'll continue to send you those updates, and I apologize for the late submission for you guys, but we're pushing out, thanks to Anna and Jim, one additional live session so the story ends well. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Anna, for meditating it, and being mindful, shorthanded, and matching with Jim telepathically before coming on this call. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you for all the attendees for coming and sharing your self-care Sundays with the 3 of us. And Tanya, thank you very much for being a co-panelist, an impromptu co-panelist. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys April 11th. You don't need to re-register. It'll just be the same link, and you'll be invited back in there. So thanks, guys. Have a wonderful Sunday. Jim, Anna, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Kareem. Thanks, Jim.
Feel better.
Good night. Thank you.
Guys. Oh, man, Jim, Anna. The purple.
Wasn't so bad. Wasn't so
Yeah,
bad.
purple. I love the
No,
purple.
you-
Just,
Yeah, I chose purple. I
did
could
you
have
guys plan
chose
this, or did you know?
no,
Wow.
no, but we both like purple.
That is
We
the
do both.
that is the telepathic end there, eh? Wow.
Yeah,
What
pretty
what is
funny.
it about purple that gets you guys like telepathically
Well,
linked?
I've always liked purple. I don't know why.
Oh, purple is the color of divinity. So I thought, well, I'm a Catholic, Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim, Sufi, Jew. So it's probably a good idea to
Right.
have some divinity around my healing fractures. So
That was awesome, man. What's the one tip that you wanted to, or one thing that maybe we didn't cover in the hour that you were like, oh, I wish that this would have come out?
I don't, the only thing that I think, and Tanya alluded to it, I alluded to it, and I just wonder if we want to spend a little more time there with that, what I call positive toxicity, where someone can only ever meet something with a positive response. And so then that's not actually holding your space or meeting you where you're at or letting you be authentic. And it's probably not leading you to your own authenticity, right? So, and we, as physios, I think sometimes even will have a tendency, I certainly, when I was a younger physio, this feels terrible. It's going to get better, right away. Instead of, yeah, I know. Like even just a, yeah, I know first would make all the difference in the world, right? So maybe we want to cover that, but I think we kind of have touched upon it. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I liked it as empathy for sure.
Sure. Are you saying that we shouldn't be positive? Like
No, I think we should be positive, but I think we have to be really mindful that sometimes when we try to be positive immediately in response to something that someone tells us, that we are not honoring what their truth. We're not really, we're trying to reroute them really quickly. And yes, we want to be a positive influence on people, but the truth is we'll be a more positive influence if we let whatever they need to say land first. So to give you the best example I've ever had in my professional career is a woman who is chronically negative. And I had no idea why. And one day when I decided, rather than bouncing back with positivity, I spent the entire physio visit asking bigger questions. And ultimately, I found out what was at the foundation of her negativity. And it's a horrible story of child abuse that I would have never heard if I had continued to always send positivity back at her. And as soon as that was disclosed, our relationship changed, therapeutic alliance magnified, and she made massive gains.
Yeah, I think the key is if that's, to me, a good example of answering feelings with feelings, right? And often we hijack it with facts. And sometimes the positivity is the fact. We're trying to be hope dealers instead of being human beings. And we got to be the human being first, and then, let's sit there with them before you try to gradually load their positivity, right?
Yeah, and I've been called the queen of optimism and the queen of reframing, but I know now to give space first. Like I know that I don't immediately go to that. I let it land. I hold it there for whatever length of time we need to hold it there, and then you slowly can start to respond more positively. But it just is disingenuine. It doesn't get received as well, and so.
Yeah, you're giving a psychological hug, and just being positive is like sympathy. Doesn't give you that.
Great tip. That was awesome. So for those attendees that have been hanging on for that Avengers like ending, that means you, Dana, Karen, Sarah, Simon, Tatiana. I see you. Anyway, guys, thanks very much for attending. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Anna, for that Avenger-like finale. For those that hung on, and I can see they all know we're really ending this now. So great night, Anna. This is no debriefing. Just go and relax.
Okay, thank you, Kareem. Have a great night. Enjoy your meditation.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll definitely use that piece of acceptance first before positivity. So I'm not hijacking someone's
Exactly.
space. But I appreciate that. And then thanks again. And Simon, thank you for the psychological hug too.
Bye,
Right.
Simon.
There, guys.
Bye, guys.
We'll see you then. Okay. Ciao. Thanks
See
again,
you.
guys.
Thanks. Stay well.
Okay, ciao.